I'm Brian Shook. At least 4 people are dead in a pair of shootings in Georgia. The shootings happened at separate scenes in Rockmart, about 40 miles northwest of Atlanta. It's not known whether the shootings were related. President Trump is praising Senate Republicans for standing together on a bill that would have ended the government shutdown and funded a border wall. The bill failed to get the 60 votes needed to move forward, but the president insisted that it was a win. A Democratic bill that would have opened the government also failed to advance. The president reacted to both bills.
I just really want to thank the Republicans for holding. Again, on the other one, that was the opening up. That's 52-44, but you need 60 votes, so it's a long way short. And a lot of those votes were based on the fact that there was hurricane relief for certain states.
A bill that would have paid Coast Guard members is getting shot down in the Senate. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer shut down an effort to pass the bill by unanimous consent because he wants the government to open all agencies. A new report is detailing how President Trump's son-in-law got his top secret security clearance. NBC News reports that a supervisor overruled a decision by 2 career security specialists who had concerns about Jared Kushner's qualifications for a clearance. Senator Joni Ernst says her husband physically assaulted her back in 2007 before she was elected to the Senate.
Ernst, an Iowa Republican, also told Bloomberg News that she had been raped in college by someone she knew. That makes her one of the highest-profile women in her party to allege sexual assault in the era of the Me Too movement. Ernst came forward about the situations after filing for divorce from her husband. Tom Roberts, NBC News Radio.
An investigation is underway into the death of an off-duty St. Louis police officer. Authorities say 24-year-old Caitlin Alex was shot in the chest early this morning when another officer mishandled a gun. Police Chief John Hayden confirmed Alex was accidentally shot after she stopped by a home where 2 on-duty male officers had gone. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Why are you listening to this radio station? Why? When you can host your own radio show. You're listening and you think you can do better? You have a message or a product you want everyone to know about. Host your own radio show. Team up with the area's best radio professionals and let them make you sound like you should be on NBC. KCAA NBC Radio, that is. KCAA produces more than 50 local programs each week on subjects ranging from business and sports to political talk, vegan diets, or even marijuana-related issues. We don't just broadcast on the radio, we broadcast to the world. Online, on TV, on social media, on Facebook. You'll be all over. Imagine what your friends will say. And KCAA reaches over 5 million people on 3 radio stations. Join the staff on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM. NBC Radio. Jump on the KCAA Express. Call 909-793-1065. That's 909-793-1065 and get ready to transmit.
Express 106.5 FM. The #1 FM talk radio station in the Inland Empire. KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind. Express 106.5 FM.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. By the way, you can follow this show on Facebook at Viewpoint with Father John, and remember, we are on Instagram, and I'm glad that the numbers are building. We're up way over 1,000 now, so keep your friends joining us, and every few days we put up an inspirational video. So tune on in on the Instagram. See, I have old timers. I get them by the caseload over at Costco. I say rent them before you buy them. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing of false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. Brothers and sisters, Viewpoint with Father John is a listener-supported program. So you are the ones who keep us on the air. So please go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com, click on the support button, and give what you can to keep us on the air, and I truly appreciate your support. Also, I'd like to invite you to buy a copy of my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. The premise of this book is that we are all God's children, and that we do not need to find more self-improvement, but rather find more self-discovery. Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and most online bookstores. Get your copy today. And with a lot of stuff still going on in the news, the shutdown still happening, and as I've shared with you the last few weeks, and I wish we weren't still saying this, if you know someone who's a federal worker, show a little charity. If you own a house and they owe you some rent, if you can do what we call the Christian thing and just lend them a little more time until they get some more money in, because this is not their fault. They're acting in good faith. It's too bad our government isn't at this time. Tonight I have a good friend on the show this evening. I'm very excited to have Mr. Carl Morris of the Puente House Foundation. Carl and I have known each other for quite a long time and have a lot of mutual friends, but he's also one of the premier people I think of when I want to inform people about what are the issues of alcoholism and addiction and what is the hope for recovery. So Carl, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Father John. It's a privilege to be here with you tonight.
Glad to have you again. Now, you are the president and founder of the Puente House Foundation. Is that correct?
That is correct. We've been around for 25 years now, quarter of a century.
Where did the time go?
I know. You know, we've known each other even longer than that.
We have. We have.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting. What is the premise of what you do there?
Well, the Puente House Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit foundation. The purpose of this foundation is to aid men and women who are needing to get into a structured living situation, a sober living home. And so we give scholarships to people so they can get their first couple of weeks covered while they're in a sober living home, so they can get on their feet and maybe get back to work. We also do a big Thanksgiving dinner where we feed about 300 people in the recovery community. We also do a big children's toy giveaway at Christmas to children whose parents are incarcerated or in trouble due to their addiction or alcoholism. And so we are able to give away a lot of presents to those kids.
Yes, very good. It's a great thing you do. And one of the areas that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we're seeing more and more in the area of addiction is with opioids, with the doctor being the pusher. And I don't mean that in a mean thing towards doctors, but they're where they're getting.
Well, I understand where we're at a catch-22 here, because the opioid crisis is so prevalent. And everybody is trying to grasp at straws as to how to deal with this overwhelming plague on our society. Yes. And one of those avenues is using more opioid substitutes in order to try to limit the damage that the opioids are doing. Now, I understand why they would be thinking that that's a wise move, because it does limit the damage. But, you know, when you're just sort of putting that Band-Aid on it, that really does not ultimately stop the bleeding, when we all know the real solution for addiction is to have a complete rearrangement of attitudes and ideas towards life, which then allows you to enjoy life without any drugs or alcohol. Using some other temporary Band-Aid on it really is not the solution.
So it's sort of like our friend Eddie used to say, it'd be like changing seats on the Titanic.
That's exactly it, and it's a worse seat.
Yeah. Amen to that, brother. Yeah. And so people, I think, have a wrong idea that addiction is just a physical ailment. And my experience has been it's much deeper, that that's just a symptom of what's really going on. And if you're going to approach any type of addiction, whether it's to alcohol or other drugs, because a lot of people don't realize that alcohol is a drug, you really have to get down to what was going on before they even started with this. Would that be correct?
In my experience, it's yes, but then you run across other people where it's really they only really have that physical allergy and that craving, and they really seem to be normal in all other respects, and they are just as alcoholic as the other. However, many other alcoholics and drug addicts do indeed have extreme emotional difficulties that may have gone on well before the addiction set in. And either way, I believe every human being needs to sort out their demons and sort out their troubles, whether they're alcoholic or drug addict or not. We all need to address these troubles. Now, when you compound addiction and alcoholism on top of that, it seems to exponentially makes those problems more complicated and more difficult to solve. Yes. The first and foremost thing that we need to do is stop drinking and using, address that first. Then we can address all of the other emotional and struggles that the person may be having, and to solve that. In order to find long-term sobriety, we indeed need to address all of those issues at some level or another.
Absolutely. In fact, I know that when I first started doing professional counseling, mainly as a counselor, I should say, we used to have a policy, those of us who are familiar with addiction, of telling our colleagues, if someone is suffering from alcoholism and or drug addiction, wait 60 days, actually 90 days to 6 months to make a real diagnosis, because they could be having an alcohol or drug-induced psychosis. They may not really be bipolar. They may not really be schizoaffective. And you have to get them tried out to find out what is a true diagnosis and what was induced by substance, because it can really make somebody looked at and saying that it's the alcohol and drugs. Another area where people make a lot of mistakes and people get 5150, which is a 72-hour hold against their will, is when they are having an episode with diabetes, because they could appear to be hallucinating, to be disoriented, and what it is their blood sugar dropped. They either have too much insulin or they didn't have enough sugar. So that's another area.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. However, my opinion on that means nothing, because I'm a layperson. And so I need to really be careful as to going into that stuff. But you're a professional, and so therefore you can publicly say those things. But I agree with what you say.
Well, I tried for years to be a layperson, but none of the women want to cooperate. It's
Goodness. Did he really just crack that joke?
Yeah.
The guy in the sound booth just covered his face.
Yes. Well, Nick does that very well.
I don't blame him.
It's not easy being me. But it's so one of the things I've experienced, and you have a lot of experience of working not just with the people, but with their families.
Yes.
And I found that oftentimes members of the family could show more neuroses, ill adjustment, than the person suffering from the booze and the drugs, because they're there for the whole time. They have no checkout time. Has that been some of your experience with the people?
Yes. When I have some kid in my office and he's complaining about his mother, his sisters, his brother, his dad, his uncle that are all acting strange, and I go, do you know why they're acting strange? They go, no, why? I go, they are acting strange from prolonged exposure to you.
Right.
and absolutely, that is, alcoholism and drug addiction is a family disease.
Yes.
It truly affects everybody that loves and cares about or comes into contact with the alcoholic and drug addict. And the ability for the non-alcoholic or drug addict to understand what's going on is almost impossible.
Right.
They just really cannot get it. They truly believe that if they love that person enough, fix enough of their problems for them, that surely the addiction will subside. And what they don't understand is it's actually making it worse. By rescuing them from their own actions and making it better, they actually give the addict and alcoholic an excuse to do it again, or the rationalization to do it again. And here's the hardest thing. You see, the maternal instinct, and I'm a father, and the paternal instinct is to protect and fix it for my kids.
Yes.
And I know the maternal instinct is even stronger than my instinct. And I see it all the time. They just truly believe if I can just love him enough, if I can just protect him or her enough, my little baby will be okay. And it's the hardest thing to ask a mother, that she needs to set aside her maternal instincts and let her son or daughter pay the price for their addiction, because that's going to be the only way, the only possible way that they can possibly maybe have, Eddie used to always like to call it, the propitious moment.
Right.
Where maybe they'll see the truth about their addiction and maybe possibly take some actions to solve it.
And the other way that the family's affected by this, and this is the one that always breaks my heart, and dealing with the children, because oftentimes some of the kids will say, if I was just better, Mom or Dad wouldn't be drinking anymore. If I just stay out of sight, or if I become the troublemaker, and they play all these different roles because they think that somehow it's their responsibility, and they actually become the adult of the family for a while.
That's even more heartbreaking on the other side, more than the father and mother blaming themselves or trying to fix it for the child. The child blaming themselves or trying to fix it in the parent, because the child is so much more immature. Right. And then can absolutely get warped ideas about their role in this world and their role in alcoholism and addiction. Man, my heart goes out to men and women who grew up in the alcoholic or drug addict home.
I've done funerals, and I'm sorry if I get teary-eyed when I say this, because it really does tear my heart out, for kids who have committed suicide because they thought maybe if they were out of the picture, that would help. And they weren't trying to be selfish. They really were trying to do something. And that shows how the whole family becomes neurotic. Yeah. Because that's not sane thinking. And, sane being of good health from the Latin and from the Greek as well. And to see kids do that, every time I have one of those come to me, I cry myself to sleep for a week.
Yeah, it could easily also be that they think if my mom or my mother or father actually loved me, they wouldn't be doing this. They would not be drinking and using if they truly loved me. And I know for a fact that when it comes to drug addiction and alcoholism, the love for a child, it's overridden. It actually, even the basic human instinct of self-survival is overridden by the addiction. See, this is what I'm convinced. I have two kids. They're 12 and 14, and I just love them to death. It's like I truly met who I would die for. I've never felt that way before. I really haven't.
Incredible.
Throughout my life, I've loved a lot of people, but I never felt like I would die for someone else.
Right.
Like, I love you. I've known you a long time. I
Over 30 years.
really do love you. But, if we're out at Starbucks later and some guy comes in with a gun and says, one of you's got to go, I'd say, have you met my friend, Father John? He's more likely to have a better afterlife than me anyway. Right? So I'd throw you under the bus. But if it's my kids, I would dive under that bus, right in front of that bullet.
Sure.
But when it comes to addiction, this is what I know, because I'm a sober alcoholic and drug addict myself for 32 years. Last Monday, by the way.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I know this. I would never trade my kids for the first drink. Right. Never in a million years would I trade my kids for the first drink. But I understand the power of my alcoholism and my addiction, even though I'm 32 years sober. Right. Although I would never trade them for the first drink, I would trade my kids for the second drink, like that.
Sure.
So therefore, if I want to be a good father, I have to put recovery first. It
Right.
must be the paramount thing. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. And when a child is feeling like if his parents loved them more, they wouldn't do that. I guarantee you, with their last dying breath of the father or the mother from their addiction, they would say, but I love you. I didn't mean to do that.
Yes.
I have the purest love for you, but I can't stop.
Yes. Well, speaking about being under the gun, we're coming up to our first commercial break. My guest this evening is Mr. Carl Morris of the Puente House Foundation, and we'll be back in 2 and 2.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, Veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
I'm so tired of the buffering on my smartphone.
I'm so over it. Next.
Right? I am so over it. Next.
A radio? Next.
No buffering, just your favorite local radio station?
Next Radio uses the FM tuner that is already built into your phone, so you can listen to your favorite stations on the go. Because Next Radio uses the FM tuner already built into your smartphone, it saves on data and battery usage. When compared to streaming audio, Next Radio uses less than 1/10 of your data, and your battery will last 3 times longer. Next Radio, it's FM radio on your smartphone.
Introducing a radio inside your cell phone. Listen to all kinds of local radio stations, including KCAA 106.5 Yucaipa and 102.3 Riverside on Next Radio. Download the free Next Radio app today. 100% free, 100% fun, 0% buffering. Stop the buffer and listen to KCAA.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at KCAAradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. And again, I want to remind you that you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Both are under Viewpoint with Father John. And I kindly ask you to remember that this is a listener-supported program. And everybody who's been given, I really want to thank you. You're the reason we're still on the air. We're coming up to our year anniversary tonight.
Oh, really?
We've been on this.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm now a toddler in radio. So we're very excited about that, and we wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. And so I'm really grateful to all of you who've been dedicated. We get from all around the world. We have people who are now listening in Brazil, Panama, Philippines, and
that's
all
fantastic.
sending me stuff. So
good work, John. Good work.
Well, that's God, not me, but thank you. And so my guest this evening, again, is Mr. Carl Morris of the Puente House Foundation, and we're talking about the disease of alcoholism and drug addiction, the hope for recovery, and also family dynamics that go with it. And this is a very important topic because with all the media stuff we have 2 issues. One, either lack of information or abundance of bad information. And that's why I wanted Carl to come on the program to help give from another perspective by somebody who has worked with people. Doesn't matter if he's lay or professional. He's been in the field of bringing help to people who can't help themselves without someone help bringing them up. And that's basically all of us, but with addiction as well. What are some of the things you think are important to take place to get people to recovery? Because as Father Joseph Martin used to say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. However, you can make it thirsty.
Yep. I think one of the most important things that an individual needs to do in order to find recovery is to hang out with other recovering people. Right. That's the first and foremost thing. The other stuff does not happen unless you're doing that first. And that was a secret that really happened just 83 years ago, really. Mankind really didn't know what to do about alcoholism for so many years, for centuries.
Right.
Centuries and centuries they have known. You can read into the Old Testament where they talked about people who tarry long at the wine, I believe.
Right.
And so they knew about us, but they never knew what to do. And throughout the centuries, in some sort of community setting, one of us would often, sort of like a stray kernel of popcorn, would, boom, get sober. Right? Just sort of like, poof, they would get sober. The town drunk would get sober, and the whole town would go, whoa, holy smoke, why is Joe sober? Joe, what happened? And Joe would go, I don't know. I don't know. And so now Joe is useless because he can't help the town wants him to come help their brother, help their sister, and Joe doesn't even know what happened himself, and so he can't help, so he's useless.
Right.
And what I believe happened 83 years ago through the 12-step movement, and the birth of that is we learned how to mass produce that. Right. That thing that used to happen randomly and only once in a while. We've learned how to mass produce that rearrangement of attitudes and ideas, as the celebrated psychiatrist Carl Jung said must happen, that we must have this complete rearrangement and ideas towards life. So we've learned to mass produce it, much like Henry Ford learned how to mass produce the automobile for the common person, whereas before only the uber rich could have the automobile. Now the common person can have this rearrangement of attitudes and ideas towards life, this fundamental change in the way we look at the world. And the first thing that has to happen is you have to hang out with other people that are doing the same thing. If I want to be a professional golfer, I have to hang out with other golfers. I need to discuss golf. I need to think about golf. I need to eat, sleep, and breathe golf if I want to become a really good golfer. If I want to become an engineer, I need to go to engineering school. I need to hang out with other engineers, like-minded people, discuss all of the dynamics of engineering if I want to really infiltrate that into my life. And for recovery, it's the same thing. I must hang out with other recovering people that feel that recovery is the most important thing in their life, where we discuss it, we discuss what must be done, we support each other. And of course, ultimately, we need to take the 12 steps.
Sure. And, you know, I've read the history of Alcoholics Anonymous and many different platforms. And one of the things that struck me, now they did come off the Oxford movement. And at one time in Akron, they were having one meeting a week. And a lot of people think that that was all that was going on. That was the meeting. But all week long, they all took time for devotion in the morning. They had to read scripture. They had to do these other things because they hadn't written out the 12 steps yet. In fact, at that time, it was a 6-step program. But all week, they hung out together. They would have coffee together. They would go over to Dr. Bob's house. And Dr. Bob and Ann were so poor at the time that sometimes all they had to serve was milk and bread, but they would have a feast with people and they'd have a party because they were helping keep each other sober by hanging out, you know, as they say in today's language, changing playgrounds and play friends. And I think that's one of the things that's important about sober living. I know I'm digressing a little bit, is the fact you're getting them out of the old playground and into a new group of playmates, so to speak.
Absolutely. Again, it's sober living. The idea of sober living is really this. When somebody is newly sober, they have some major problems. And usually one of them is a safe place to live.
Right.
And so they need to move where they are currently living, because that obviously was not a good situation. But it's really hard when you are newly sober to pass a credit check. Right. For a new place to live. In fact, if you can pass a credit check, you probably not ready yet. I know, it's kind of a silly joke, right? And you can't afford first, last security deposit.
Sure.
Be able to have the money and the credit to turn on the utilities, these types of things. So sober living is a very easy transition into a very affordable place to live. And so you, most sober livings, especially out here in the Inland Empire, and ours are in Covina, only charge $23 a day. You can't even be in a Motel 6 for that.
Right.
But what you do trade your privacy by being with a number of other people in the house, but you are then trading your privacy for 24-hour management, your analysis testing, documenting your sobriety in case there's some sort of outside entity that is interested in that, that you are given structure and a code to live by. We escort people to court. We solve their court issues at $23 a day. You can't be, there's a lot of other services that are inherent in a well-run sober living. So in your early sobriety, all of those outside problems of where do I live, how do I deal with my court issues, do I have any friends, where am I supposed to go, who am I supposed to hang out with, are all solved by you coming into a well-structured living situation, such as Puente House. Right. Shameless plug right there.
There you go. And why I plug you here too. So
yes.
And it's really a bad idea, because people come in with problems thinking that no matter how friendly your dope dealer is, it's not good to live on their couch while you're trying to get sober.
No. And in fact, they don't want you there either. But you know what else is strange? Is that even though your family may love you and they may have been the one that paid for treatment, they might not be a safe place to live either.
Right.
Because when you are newly sober, even if you come from a loving, supportive family, I guarantee you the alcoholic drug addict has a lot of issues with the family. Whether it be the shame of the embarrassment that they put them through, or the shame of failing in their parents' eyes, or maybe the parents have a million different problems themselves, but boy, they love their kid. But that living situation might be toxic. Whereas, boy, those parents mean well, and the newly sober drug addict or alcoholic mean well, but boy, that argument happens in the kitchen on that 28th day of sobriety. And that argument happens, and the drug addict alcoholic says, "Screw it, I'm out of here." And they blaze out of there, and they don't have the support system built up yet to instinctually go with his other fellows that are also sober, and they lose their sobriety, and they wonder what just happened. If you're in a sober living home, you're living there, and you're visiting the family, and slowly repairing your relationship, but you have a place to run back to when it doesn't go that well at Thanksgiving dinner.
Well, there's another issue, too. For years, I worked in adolescent addiction, and I was part of a residential program where I was the director for a few years. And one of the things that we really dealt with there, the kid coming into program was what we call the IP, the identified patient. Mm-hmm. So everything that was going on with the family that was wrong was pinned on the IP. You're the reason we're screwed up. Well, Junior, I'm not trying to be sexist here, but it's just easy to say that. Junior starts getting better, but they're still crazy, the rest of the family. Mm-hmm. But he's not screwing up, so he can't be blamed. And so many times we'd have parents where it was subconsciously or consciously would come in, get the kid screwed up again so the kid's the IP again. Yeah. And it takes the focus off all the other issues in the family, because after all, Junior's the one screwing up. And people think that doesn't happen. It used to... It's pretty much what drove me out of that end of working in treatment, because of the fact I forgive me, but I wanted to throttle some of these parents.
Yes, I understand.
Because they wouldn't enter into therapy themselves, and one of the things I initiated, that any adolescent that was put into our program, it was mandatory. It wasn't this before I took over as director. It was mandatory the family had to get into treatment, the entire family.
Yes.
Because otherwise it's too much of a setup for them to go back and make the IP the focus of the problem of all the things going on in the family. And so, people are getting sober younger and younger now.
Yes, they are.
A lot of things are driving them in.
Yeah.
And
it's hard. Think about this. Think how hard it is to get the alcoholic and drug addict who has the court cases, the obvious evidence, the drink in their hand, the needle in their arm. It's hard enough to get them to see the problem, that they are spiritually sick and they need help. Think how hard it must be to get the people who have no bottle in their hand, no needle in their arm, to get them to realize they need help. It seems to be almost against human nature to say, I need help, when actually that's really the solution almost to anything.
Yes.
Whether it's addiction or not, is help. And the feeling of community is vital.
One of the other problems we have with that, and I get this because I bury a lot of children, is people say, well, you're too young to have a problem. They're not too young to die. This year I buried over 20 kids that didn't make 18, directly related to drugs and alcohol.
And mainly because the opiate, because it's so easy to overdose.
You can tell how bad it affects me. I start losing my voice just talking about it, because it hurts me so deeply to look in a casket and, for all intents and purposes, look at a child who, if you put together, and I'm not the first to say this, but I stand behind it 1,000%. If you put together all the heart attacks, people killed by drunk drivings, people killing other people in rage, cirrhosis, heart attacks, strokes, alcoholism and drug addiction would be the number one killer in America.
Yes, but they don't put those all in the same statistic either.
Right.
Such as the drunk stumbling off the sidewalk and getting hit by a bus.
Right.
That's not labeled alcoholism. That's a traffic accident. But that was really alcoholism. And like you said, all of these heart attacks, the dying of diabetes, many times it is a result of alcoholism, not really the pure, like if I die now, because I have a family history of heart disease.
Right.
When I die of heart disease, which I probably will, I'm trying to hang until I'm 80, but that's 25 years from now.
Sure.
If I can, then it will truly be heart disease. But if I would have died of a heart attack before I got sober, that would have been alcoholism.
Right.
Yeah.
Even as it stands, it's still considered the number 3 killer in the United States.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, we get show money. So it's not too bad.
Yep.
And it really is heartbreaking. And as much as we know these statistics, there's something else that you and I both know. You can't scare somebody into recovery.
No.
Because there's always that thing, it won't happen to me.
Well, I agree, but at the same time, you can scare them into temporarily getting into the rooms of recovery, but for them to actually practice the principles, actually accept that, the world of recovery and the 12 steps into their life, that has to be some sort of deep down, profound desire to live and to live purposefully and with the best way to live with purpose and a craving or a desire to do that. It's got to come from within, or who knows what that is, but somehow the spirit of life needs to be desired at a deep level.
Well, we of the religious bent call it a miracle.
Yeah.
And I often refer to something that happened on Ed Sullivan's show. He used to get these kids and ask them their definition of words. Now, you probably saw this before I did because you're a couple years older than I am.
Easy.
Did you hear that bus coming? You just got thrown under. So anyhow, he asked this knot-headed boy what his definition of a miracle was. And without missing a beat, the boy says to Ed Sullivan, a miracle is something that can't happen till it does.
Ah, that's beautiful.
And I think that's what you're describing. Mm-hmm. When that awareness takes place, I need help.
Yeah.
I think that's nothing shy of a miracle, because with the denial of what takes place, someone that you and I assume we both looked up to, Father Joseph Martin, used to talk about the problem of denial, and he'd tell this story about this old man in his 80s. He's 83 years old. He's going to marry this 18-year-old. And everyone's trying to tell him what a bad idea it is. And he just won't listen. So finally, they decided to do an intervention. And so they intervene on him, and you have the doctor, you have the attorney, the accountant, the kids. Everyone's there, and he just won't hear it. So finally, the doctor says, Hank, have you thought about the fact you're 83 years old? She's 18. You're going to get married. You're going to go on the honeymoon. You're going to have intimate relations. And with that gap in age, have you ever thought about the fact that might just induce death? Well, that stopped him. He thought for a moment, and then he said, well, if she dies, she dies.
I'm looking in the control room again. Is he holding his eyes again?
Yes, he is. Dick always does.
Oh, goodness sakes.
But speaking of, if she dies, she dies. We're at our next commercial break, and we will die if we don't go to commercial.
What a way to go out. What a way to go out.
And so, again, my guest this evening is Mr. Carl Morris, and we will be back in 2 and 2.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org, www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
If you're looking for a full or part-time sales position and you have radio, TV, or print media experience, KCAA has a great opportunity waiting for you that pays the highest commissions in the market. KCAA is the only station in the IE that broadcasts on 3 frequencies, so advertisers receive 3 ads for 1 low rate. This makes KCAA a must-buy for every local business. If you're interested in a sales position with us, email ceo@kcaaradio.com.
From the KCAA Weather Center, I'm Glenn Anderson. Your forecast for the rest of this evening calls for mostly clear skies, lows dropping down to about 46 degrees with light winds. Sunshine on the way for your Friday with a high near 74, and more sunshine through the weekend with highs reaching the mid to upper 70s. I'm Glenn Anderson, broadcasting live from the Tri-City Center at the 10 and 210 freeways with a trifecta of talk in Southern California. KCAA 102.3 FM Riverside, 106.5 FM The Redlands, and Legacy 1050 AM Loma Linda, San Bernardino.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292 FQ Riverside, and K293 CF Moreno Valley.
And welcome back, friends. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at KCAAradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. And brothers and sisters, I do want to remind you that this is a listener-supported program. You're the ones that keep us on the air each week. So please go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com, click on the support button, and give what you can. I truly do thank you for your support. Also, I would like to once again invite you to buy a copy of my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me. The premise of this book is that we are all God's children, and that we do not need more self-improvement, rather we need self-discovery. Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and most online bookstores. And if they don't have it on their online bookstore, well, phooey with them, block that one. So I give you absolution in advance. And again, my guest tonight is a good friend of mine and so on. I have a lot of respect for Mr. Carl Morris from the Puente House Foundation, and we've been talking about alcoholism and drug addiction, the hope for recovery, and also how it affects the family. Carl, people who are listening tonight, some are probably saying, I know somebody with a problem. How can I lead them towards some help? Do you have any suggestions for them?
Boy, oh boy. It really is difficult because we all know somebody who's an alcoholic and a drug addict in various stages. I mean, you most certainly are welcome to try to call a local treatment center or, somebody like me and see if we talk one-on-one and try to figure out, is it even possible the person might respond to the conversation about doing something about it? A lot of times you have to wait for that next difficult day where they get arrested, they get another DUI, they get fired from that next job, or they're again, back at that thing that Eddie used to call the propitious moment. Right. The next time they are so hungover that you then address them and say, do you really want to do something? And if that morning they say, yes, do something right then.
Right.
Get in the car and drive to the treatment center or to the counselor to talk right then. Do something right then. Take them to a 12-step meeting right then.
Right.
Do not wait until, we'll do sleep it off and we'll do something tomorrow. No, you got to get them when they're hurting. You got to get them when it's it's still a good idea for them to seek help, because the strange thing about alcoholism and drug addiction is they want help at 9 in the morning and at 3 in the afternoon they have changed their mind.
Right. And pain's a great motivator.
Yes, exactly.
Now, something that I'm going to say seems counterintuitive, but I hope people will hear me out with this. Don't throw out their booze. They only buy more.
Yep, true.
And sometimes a drink can save their life.
True.
Alcoholism and drug addiction, these are medical diseases. And alcohol is ethyl alcohol. It's liquefied ether. which we used to use in the operating room. And it is, when being detoxed, people can very easily die from it. That's why they stopped using ether, because it was so unsafe. Because while you're trying to measure it out, because nobody's system is exactly alike. Some people died just from that.
Absolutely.
And so
that's why there are detox centers, and you really,
yes,
you often cannot kick alcohol and barbiturates cold turkey without medical help. There are some other drugs, and strangely enough, opiates.
Yes.
You are not in a physical danger from opiates. It just feels that way.
Right.
An example is if you get arrested and they find out you're a heroin addict, they just give you the no-frills detox. They just throw you in the general population, you shake, rattle, and roll. But if they find out you're addicted to alcohol and or barbiturates, they put you in the infirmary because your major organs might shut down.
Yes.
So it's important when you find out if you need detox that you get medical attention.
Well, yeah, and when I used to say that to people, that people more often die detoxing from alcohol than heroin.
Oh, yeah.
They all thought, oh, you're crazy.
No, the heroin addicts think they're going to die.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes wish they would, because it hurts so bad, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just an insidious disease. So I'm going to take us another route in just a second, but I haven't picked on Nick at all tonight. And how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty well, actually. Thank you for asking.
Yes.
How are you, sir? I'm
good, but I got to talk to you about these jokes you're writing for me.
I haven't been on my game. I apologize. I haven't been getting a lot of sleep, so I'll try. The next batch of jokes will be much better.
Nick, do you really take the blame for these jokes? I've known John a long time. These are his jokes.
I'm the board op, so I have no choice but to take the blame for most things.
As a good engineer would.
Exactly.
And you know, he told me last week I should get on top of my game, and so I did. And Gabby told me, quit sitting on the Monopoly game. Get out of here. And Gabby's across the studio from us, and she's.
I didn't write that one, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Do not pass go. Do not put that on the air. And so Gabby is across the studio from us, and I'm always thrilled to have her with us because she is really the most stable part of my life, and I'm very grateful to have her in my life.
And she takes a good picture for Facebook.
She does. She does, considering what she has to work with on my end of it. And so I asked her to make me look good. She says, I do magic, not miracles. So I'm going to go into an area that's going to sound derogatory, and it's not. I think it's very important factual information for the listeners to have. There is a world of difference between a sober living and a flop house.
Yes.
And a lot of people are just going and renting houses, calling it a sober living, and all they're doing is renting a bed for someone to come, and they don't do testing for drugs. There's no structured program. And can you talk to that a little bit?
You bet. You bet. If you are really going to be a sober living, it means that you have management or a house manager of sorts that is actually living there, monitoring the structure of the house, the cleanliness of the house, making sure people are passing urinalysis tests, and people are attending some sort of 12-step meetings and or church or whatever they decide their focus is going to be at. I think it's the 12-step idea is the best idea, along with in between, go to church. Fantastic.
Sure.
What a great place to experience God and to celebrate God, those combinations. But there's got to be testing. There's got to be accountability. People need to have structure in that house. The main one is the testing.
Right.
You cannot let people be in a sober living that are not sober. That's why it's called sober living. It's not wannabe sober living. It's not used to be sober. It is sober living.
That's an important point.
A number one. And so on top of that, now, not everybody, of course, people will fail every once in a while. You've got to have relationships with other sober living so you can then remove that person and try to get, if they want the help, to get them somewhere else. Because there has to be a repercussion. You cannot make it part of the culture in that house that, oh, we know you made the mistake, you can stay. Then the roommate says, oh, so I get 3 strikes too.
Sure.
No, you cannot. So you have to have relationships, and there's many networks of sober living homes that are really quality. One of them, National Sober Living Association.
Okay.
That is one. CCAP is another one where they certify the sober livings. They send inspectors out, and you do networking so that you can interact with other houses. I know there's a lot of people out there that may have started a sober living with good intentions, but they weren't equipped to pay attention.
Right.
Nor did they know what they were getting into, and now they have a mortgage on a house and they're scared to shut it down, but yet there's people using in there. You can call me. I have resources to help you with that. I can turn you, I can help train you. I can actually turn you over to some of these other organizations that can also help you. But if you are somebody who is ill-intentioned, I would advise you, please sell your house. Go buy a Jack in the Box. You'll do less damage, right? You'll make more money too.
Sure. I'm going to go one more area, and I know I'm going different directions, but I want to talk to the families for just a moment. You know, in one of the programs called Al-Anon, this is important information. They have a thing called the 3 C's. For those of you living with an alcoholic or drug addict, you didn't cause it, you can't control it, you can't cure it. And one of the things I tell families that I deal with is there's a universal law that you cannot truly help somebody that you share DNA with. I have a member of my family who has a terrible drug problem. I'm his uncle, the priest. I'm no good to him.
Exactly.
But other people can do what I can't do. We could be saying the same words, but he won't hear it when I'm saying it. But somebody else says it, and it's like they got a commandment straight from God. Mm-hmm. And so if you are living with somebody or you love somebody, remember those 3 C's. You can't control it. You didn't cause it. You can't control it. You can't cure it. Get help. And get help for yourself. Because as Carl said so brilliantly earlier, it is a family disease. Everybody's affected. And so keep that in mind. Is there any other things that you like in our last few minutes to share with either the families or people suffering that you think would just be good information for them to have?
Well, I would just say that in my experience, the 12-step revolution, I really want to call it the revolution that has been happening in this world for the last 83 years is a new landmarker in the field of alcoholism and drug addiction. And that when somebody honestly and truly does it, it really, really works. But you've got to get into the middle of the community and do it. It's so easy just to be on the outskirts of the 12-step community, attend a couple of meetings and watch other people doing it and wonder why you're failing. You got to get in the middle. The Super Bowl's coming up. There will be tens of thousands of people in, 80,000, 90,000 in the stands. There will be another billion people watching on TV. But the only people that are the football players are the ones on the field. And that's the same thing with the 12-step community. There are people that are actually out there doing it, and there are a lot of people watching. Make sure if you or your family member is going to the 12-step community that you're doing it, not watching it.
It's not a spectator sport.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't get better from an illness by watching somebody else take the antibiotic.
Exactly.
You got to embody it yourself, and that's very important. Next week we're going to be talking to someone who's a very important program as well. Her name is Marie White, and she's the author of Support for Parents of Missing Children.
Oh, that's valuable work.
Yes, very valuable work. And these are parents who've lost their children through kidnapping, through divorce, through runaway, through drugs.
And this woman has dedicated her life to helping people like that?
Helping like that, and she has a book all about that. And so she'll be on next week to...
Tell her I have great admiration for her already, only from listening to one sentence about who she is.
Yeah. It's a powerful thing, and it just... There's nothing that makes you feel more powerless than your child being gone, and there's not a thing you can do about it.
It just makes me heartsick thinking about it.
Yeah, it does. And I think one of the difference between that and having a child that's totally engulfed in addiction is when these children are gone, and I'm not making light of this, you don't see them, you're looking for them. When your child is consumed with alcoholism and drug addiction, they're still gone, and while you can see them, you still can't find them.
Yeah.
And both is robbing your soul with great pain.
Yes.
And so both is important for this. Again, I want to thank Mr. Carl Morris for being here. He made a long drive to be out to Redlands.
My pleasure and a privilege. I just drove on the busiest freeway in the whole United States on a Thursday rush hour, but hey, I love you.
Hey, we love you too. What are some numbers that people can contact you through who's looking for help?
Area code 626-967-1819 is the main office of the Puente House and Puente House Foundation. You can go to puentehouse.org. You can also go to our Facebook page, which is Puente House, Puentehouse. And you can email me at Carl Morris. It's Carl with a K, and Morris has one R. Carl Morris at puentehouse.org. Again, Puente House is Puentehouse.
And he wasn't trying to be different with the spelling of his last name. You may not know this. Carl was a poor child, and they could only afford one R. And
I actually have a Icelandic family name, but my great-grandfather took on the name of his employer, so he wouldn't be labeled as an immigrant on his application. Well,
that's okay. My family left Ireland in shame, and we're going to return in the same way. So it's all good. Yeah. And, for those of you listening every week, I'm so grateful for your loyalty. For those of you listening overseas, I am blown away that you tune in online, and I really do pay attention to the emails you sent me, and as you know, I do respond to them as best I can. Just so grateful that so many people allow me to be a part of your life through this. And so we'll be back with you again next week for Viewpoint with Father John here on KCAA Radio, where no listener is left behind, and there's several ways we can say that, which will get me in trouble with the FCC. Actually, I can't get in trouble with the FCC this week because they're closed.
Oh, really?
That's right. Part of the government shutdown. So
that's
closed.
Hilarious.
And so
somebody will record you and turn you in anyway.
Yeah, I see Nick with the record button right there. And again, I want to thank Nick for doing such a wonderful job.
Thanks, Nick.
He's the best in the business. He really is. He always turns red when I say that. But you know, I've had other sound engineers, and while they've all been good, Nick is in a class of his own. I want to give my thanks to Gabby for being the most incredible wife a man could have. And to you, my listeners, if no one has told you this week that they love you, let me be the first. God bless, and we'll be together next week.
KCAA